Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present the speaker for this evening's ceremony. Professor Ian Olver, Chief Executive Officer of the Cancer Council Australia. Professor Olver is the former chair of the Medical Oncology Group of Australia and Cancer Council Australia's Medical and Scientific Committee. Professor Olver was appointed Chief Executive Officer of the Cancer Council Australia in May 2006, having previously headed the Royal Adelaide Hospital Cancer Centre. Professor Olver's expertise is widely sought across the cancer care sector and by many governments. He is a member of the Advisory Council for Cancer Australia and the board of the National Breast and Ovarian Cancer Centre, and holds several honorary academic and clinical posts. Professor Olver's research interests encompass new anti-cancer drug studies, symptom control, bioethics and psycho-oncology. He has authored more than 200 journal articles, 19 book chapters and 2 books, as well as co-editing 2 books. Professor Olver is a regular commentator on cancer issues in Australia and internationally. He has appeared on television news, current affairs and breakfast programs, as well as radio, in major newspapers and magazines, and in the medical media. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Ian Olver.
Deputy Chancellor, distinguished academics, ladies and gentlemen, and the graduates of the University of Wollongong. Congratulations to you all. Today is a celebration of what you have achieved. It's the end of a great time of life for you, but it's also the beginning of the next exciting chapter. So how will you face the next chapter? I hope it's with great anticipation of what's to come. But I think we need to talk about how to approach the challenges to come. I grew up in Melbourne and I went to secondary school at Wesley College, and I have a couple of reflections from that time that I want to share with you. The first is my admiration for those who wrote the school rules, because the first rule absolutely precluded us from doing anything wrong that we could at least later defend. It said simply, boys of the school are expected to use their common sense at all times. So for the odd prank with a flower bomb or some misdemeanour on the tram, you had to accept your punishment. Using common sense was the minimum requirement. And I think using common sense is the minimum requirement for dealing with life in general, and I'm sure you'll find it the minimum requirement for those who are going out nursing and in the allied health disciplines and are dealing with the rather interesting life experiences that you'll have there. But more importantly than that, the school had one of the best mottos that I've ever come across. It was not some wimpy, we will work and play harder or something like that. It was not philosophical like Mark Twain's never let your schooling interfere with your education. Nor was it immediately practical like that of the Miami Police Department's bomb squad, which simply gives the advice, if you see us running, catch up. The Wesley motto was 4 words. Well, it was only 2 in Latin, but I won't inflict that on you. It was a challenge. It said simply, dare to be wise. Dare to be wise. Now, you might say that wisdom is something that you accumulate, and that's true. But you need to have an attitude to the tasks that are ahead of you that allow you to gain wisdom. And to that end, you might actually look to the motto of the University of Wollongong: visionary, dynamic, passionate. These are qualities that will stand you in good stead. How in everyday terms, though, can you actually be a visionary? Well, for a start, many visionaries start off by understanding the importance of innovation. Now, innovation can take many forms, but the most basic definition of innovation is change that adds value. So whatever you're doing, you want to try and add value to it. If you see something that needs changing, and it can be changed in a way that perhaps hasn't been done before, you've got to have the courage to do that. Now, some forms of innovation will take daring, but you see, that daring will lead to the greatest rewards. I quite like one of the illustrations used to teach venture capitalists about types of innovation. There were two companies who set out to make a better photocopier than had been made before. They wanted to enter into the photocopier business. One company with considerable engineering expertise set out to make a better photocopier and just improve everything about it compared to what was on the shelves. The second company decided to design photocopiers so they could be put on every desk at home and at work. So given that choice, in which one would you invest? Well, the answer for the venture capitalists was the second. The first may deliver change, but at best just an incremental change. The second, if successful, and in fact, of course, this is what did happen, would disrupt the whole photocopier business, changing from the big machines that sat in the corner of an office to the smaller models on desktops at home. Now, granted, the second strategy is much riskier than the first, but disruptive innovation is the game changer with the greater rewards. That's what requires daring. In my own field of medical oncology, I was a clinician for 30 years before joining Cancer Council Australia, and in the last decade, we have seen a disruptive change that is going to drive the treatment of cancer along further than it had in the previous 30 years. It's absolutely changing the treatment landscape. After years of incremental change with conventional cytotoxic drugs that killed every dividing cell, researchers started to look in other areas. They identified the mutations or changes in cells that each particular cancer had, and they designed therapies to particularly target those changes. And in fact, the first of these therapies has proven highly successful, and now there are whole new classes of drugs and small molecules that have appeared. And there's now almost no cancer type that at least doesn't have some therapy available, and what's more, it can be personalised to that cancer. So it was a disruptive change rather than the slow change that has taken the leap forward that we've seen over the last few years. And we're now at a point where 2/3 of the people who get cancer today will still be alive in 5 years' time. In the last 20 years, the death rate from cancer in Australia has decreased by 17%, all because researchers decided to take a different direction to just the incremental change that had occurred up until then. An area in which I did a lot of research was encountering the vomiting associated with chemotherapy. So that's why I'm not often asked as an after-dinner speaker. However, over my research life, I saw this problem going from a dose-limiting toxicity to a controllable side effect in most cases. And that was due to the discovery of two completely new classes of drug that hits the targets that were associated with that side effect of chemotherapy. And so I saw the field in which I was doing clinical trials solve a problem by looking in new places for new mechanisms rather than better ways of using the old drugs that were available. Now, one other way to innovate is to cross disciplines. As a medical oncologist, my MD was in clinical trials methodology, but I actually later did a PhD in bioethics, the bioethics of life and death decision making, and subsequently even studied some theology. But these were not to be put in separate boxes. There are many ethical issues to resolve around end-of-life care in cancer medicine. There are qualitative techniques learned from the humanities that can be applied to researching those areas. And of course, spiritual well-being for cancer patients and others, which is far broader than just religiosity, is a discrete component of quality of life when patients face big existential questions. And this is also needed in the broader context of research in cancer. So once you adopt a mindset for innovation, it changes the way you approach problems. My research career was not really essential to my new role at the Cancer Council, but nonetheless I still found new directions that needed to be taken. We happened to be responsible for publishing treatment guidelines in the various cancers, but we faced the problem that our books were always out of date because of the rapid change in the field and difficult to disseminate. So we spent 2 years and a couple of $100,000 modifying a media wiki platform on which we could easily update and disseminate guidelines. And testing that solution has put us in the forefront of guidelines in the international arena. So you need to think outside the square, whatever tasks that you're asked to do. So having crossed disciplines and worked in several different areas in cancer control, I should tell you that for those of you here graduating in nursing and allied health and the health sciences, I had no idea when I graduated in medicine that the future would take me into so many interesting fields. But I guess I just accepted the challenges when they arose and I dared to pursue wisdom. So my message today is simple. Go from here and, as the motto of the University of Wollongong says, do your work with dynamism. Dare to innovate to fulfil the university's challenge to be a visionary. Of course, do whatever you do with passion. And if you find you don't feel a passion for what you're doing, you're probably doing the wrong thing. But don't be timid about stepping out of your comfort zones and crossing disciplines to add value to the primary field that you are pursuing. Dare to care if you're in the caring professions like most of the graduates are tonight. Dare to get to know your patients personally and to share with them the normal human experiences. So face the future with an innovative spirit and, in short, dare to be wise.